Welcome back to Void of Fears. Before we jump into today's story, I've got to ask for a quick favour. If you could smash that like button, drop a comment below, and hit subscribe if you haven't already. It seriously makes a huge difference. YouTube's algorithm loves that stuff, and it pushes my videos to new viewers who might dig these stories too. I really appreciate every single one of you who takes the time to do that. It means the world to me and helps keep this channel growing. Alright, enough of me rambling. Let's dive into today's story. If you're watching this, you need to understand what we've done, what I've done. My name is Dr. Ethan Cross, and I'm recording this message from what used to be Earth orbit. Except Earth isn't here anymore. Neither is the Moon. Neither is Mars, or Jupiter, or Saturn, or any of the planets that once made up our solar system. I'm drifting in a rescue pod, surrounded by perfect emptiness, and I have approximately 6 hours of oxygen left. Not that it matters. The oxygen will run out long before what's out here finds me. But I'm getting ahead of myself. You need to understand how we got here. You need to know what we found in the darkness beyond Pluto, and why the silence of space is a mercy we should never have broken. Let me start 3 years ago when everything still made sense. 3 years ago, I was happy. I had a job I loved, leading communications for NASA's Deep Space Network in Goldstone, California. My team was small but brilliant. Dr. Diane Foster, our mission director, had forgotten more about space exploration than most people would ever learn. Trevor Walsh, our systems engineer, was young enough to still believe anything was possible, and Dr. Amelia Wright, our xenobiologist, had been brought in as insurance, a just-in-case consultant for the impossible scenario where we'd actually find something alive out there. We were launching Sentinel-9, a deep space probe designed to explore the Kuiper Belt and search for the hypothetical Planet 9. Beautiful mission, clean parameters, the kind of project that would make your career without changing the world. The launch was perfect. September morning, clear skies, flawless trajectory. For 2 years, I had the best job in the world. Every week, I'd sit alone in mission control during the graveyard shift, receiving transmissions from our tiny ambassador billions of miles away. It took 10 hours for my commands to reach the probe, another 10 for its responses to return. In that silence, that vast separation, I found a kind of peace I'd never known. Sentinel-9 sent back extraordinary images. Jupiter's storms, each one large enough to swallow Earth. Saturn's rings, delicate and impossibly vast. The pale blue mystery of Uranus. Neptune's dark, churning atmosphere. And then, beyond them all, nothing but the infinite dark. I got to know that probe like a friend. Every quirk of its systems, every fluctuation in its solar panels, every pixel of data it transmitted. When you spend 2 years in conversation with a machine, even with 10-hour delays between responses, you develop a relationship with it. I knew its rhythms, I understood its language. That's why I knew something was wrong, the moment the alarm started. It was a Wednesday night, October 15th. I was alone in mission control, drinking coffee that had gone cold hours ago, half watching a data stream that should have been routine. Then, every sensor on my board lit up red. Sentinel-9 had detected something massive. The size readings were absurd, approximately 1,200 kilometers in diameter, roughly the size of our moon. But the density was all wrong. The spectroscopic analysis showed elements that didn't match anything in our databases. The mass distribution defied every model of natural formation we had. My hands were shaking as I pulled up the optical feed. At first I thought the image was corrupted. The structure I was seeing couldn't exist. Not naturally. Not out there in the cold dark, 52 astronomical units from the sun. in a region of space where nothing should exist but ice and rock. But as the image resolved, I realized I was looking at something artificial, something built. The structure was geometric, but not in any way human engineering would approach geometry. The angles were precise, but they created forms that made my eyes hurt to follow. Surfaces that seemed to exist in more than 3 dimensions, edges that appeared straight from one perspective but curved from another. It was like looking at a building designed by something that understood mathematics we hadn't discovered yet. The surface temperature was minus 250 degrees Celsius. Dead cold. But deep inside, our instruments detected faint energy signatures. Not heat exactly, something else. Pulses of something that might have been power, or might have been something we didn't have words for, occurring approximately once every 17 minutes. Like a heartbeat, if the heart only beat 4 times per hour. I sat there for 10 minutes just staring at the screen, before my brain finally accepted what I was seeing. Then I picked up the phone and called Diane. This better be important, Ethan. Her voice was thick with sleep. It was 11:47 p.m. We found something, I said. My voice didn't sound like my own. You need to come in, right now. Bring everyone. There was a pause. I could hear her sitting up, suddenly alert. How big of a something? Big enough that everything changes. By 3 a.m., the entire team had assembled in the main conference room. I'd pulled up all the data on the large displays. Nobody spoke for a full minute. We just stood there staring at proof that we weren't alone in the universe. Mother of God, Trevor finally whispered. That's artificial. That's actually, genuinely artificial. It's not just artificial, Amelia said quietly. She was leaning close to one of the screens, studying the spectroscopic data. Look at the surface erosion patterns. Look at the isotope decay in these elements. That thing isn't thousands of years old. It's not millions of years old. Based on these readings, that structure has been out there for at least 3 billion years. The number hung in the air. 3 billion years. When that structure was built, Earth was a lifeless rock. The most complex organisms on our planet were single-celled bacteria. Whatever built that thing had achieved interstellar civilization while Earth was still figuring out photosynthesis. We need to know what it is, Diane said. She'd shifted into mission director mode, practical and focused. We need to map the interior. We need to understand what we're dealing with before we report this up the chain. We can send an active electromagnetic pulse, I offered. It would work like sonar. The pulse bounces off internal structures and we can map what's inside based on the return signal, But what? Diane asked. I chose my words carefully. It would be active. We'd be announcing our presence. If anything inside that structure is still functional, still aware in any way, it would know we're here. The room went silent again. I could see the calculation happening behind everyone's eyes, the weight of the decision we were about to make. Trevor broke the silence. We came billions of miles to explore the unknown. We built Sentinel-9 specifically to find things we've never seen before. We can't stop now just because we're scared of what we might discover. This is first contact. This is everything humanity has been dreaming about for centuries. We have to know. We have to be careful, Amelia countered. We have no idea what that thing is, who built it, or what its purpose is. For all we know, it could be a weapon, or a tomb, or something we don't have concepts for yet. We're talking about technology that's 3 billion years old. We're infants playing with something we can't comprehend. Which is exactly why we need more information, Diane said. She looked at me. How long would it take to program the pulse? 2 hours, maybe 3. I'd need to calibrate it carefully. Strong enough to penetrate deep into the structure, but not so powerful that we risk damaging anything. Do it, Diane decided. We'll reconvene at 6 a.m. Trevor, start running scenarios on what we might be dealing with. Amelia, pull together everything we know about ancient structures in the solar system. Let's approach this methodically. I spent the next 2 hours and 41 minutes programming what would turn out to be humanity's greatest mistake. I was meticulous. I triple-checked every parameter. The pulse would be a carefully calibrated burst of electromagnetic radiation across multiple frequencies, designed to penetrate the structure and reflect back detailed information about its interior composition and architecture. At 6:23 a.m., with my team gathered around my station, I transmitted the command. "Signal sent," I announced. "It'll reach the structure in 10 hours and 47 minutes. "And then another 10 hours and 47 minutes for the return data," Trevor said, "so we'll know what we're dealing with around 3 a.m. tomorrow morning." We went home, tried to sleep, failed. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, thinking about that ancient structure floating in the darkness. Who had built it? Why? What had they been trying to accomplish 3 billion years ago when Earth was still a barren rock? I was back at mission control by 2 a.m., too anxious to wait at home. The others trickled in over the next hour. By 3 a.m., we were all gathered around my workstation watching the clock count down. At 5:10 p.m. the previous day, the pulse had reached the structure. For the first 3 minutes after transmission, nothing changed. Sentinel-9 continued its passive observations. The energy signatures inside the structure maintained their steady rhythm. Everything was exactly as it had been. Then, at 5:23 p.m., something shifted. "The energy signatures are changing," I said, watching the data stream. "They're increasing, not dramatically, but steadily." On the screen, the faint readings from within the structure began to climb. The pulses, which had been occurring every 17 minutes, started coming faster. Every 16 minutes, every 15, every 12. "It's like watching something wake up," Amelia whispered. She was right. It was exactly like that. Section by section, the ancient structure was coming online. Systems that had been dormant for potentially billions of years were activating in sequence. And it wasn't random. There was a pattern, a logic to the activation sequence, like a massive computer running through a startup procedure. "What have we done?" Diane asked quietly. Then the probe's cameras captured something that made my blood freeze. Something emerged from the structure. At first, it was just a dark spot against the stars, barely visible. But as it moved closer to Sentinel-9, details became clear. It wasn't a ship, not in any conventional sense. It had no visible hull, no engines, no windows or ports. It looked almost organic, like something grown rather than built, all flowing curves and surfaces that seemed to ripple, even though there was no atmosphere for them to ripple through. And the way it moved was wrong. It didn't fire thrusters or build up momentum. It just moved, cutting through space as if physics was a suggestion rather than a law. One moment it was near the structure. The next, it had crossed 250,000 kilometers. Not gradually accelerating, just suddenly elsewhere, like frames had been cut from a film. "How fast is that thing moving?" Trevor asked, his voice tight. I checked the tracking data and felt my stomach drop. It's not accelerating. There's no measurable thrust. It's just appearing at different points along a trajectory towards Sentinel-9. "That's impossible," Diane said. "I know." The thing closed the distance in under 3 minutes. Sentinel-9's collision avoidance systems tried to fire escape thrusters, but it was too late. The thing was moving far faster than our probe could run. At 4:15 p.m, the feed went dead. Complete signal loss. No telemetry, no data, no visual. Just empty static. "Ethan?" Diane's voice was controlled, but I could hear the fear underneath. "I'm trying to re-establish contact." My fingers were flying across the keyboard, running every diagnostic I could think of. The signal could be blocked by the structure's mass, or there could be debris in the way, or some kind of interference. 37 minutes later, the feed came back, but something was horribly wrong. The signal strength was normal, actually slightly stronger than before. But there was corruption in the data stream, strange artifacts I'd never seen in any transmission. The video feed showed Sentinel-9's camera pointing back toward the structure, which made no sense. If the probe had been trying to escape at maximum thrust, the camera should have been facing along the trajectory, not backward. Did the probe change orientation? Trevor asked. I pulled up the navigational data and I settled in my stomach. No, the camera is in its standard position. The probe hasn't rotated at all, which means Sentinel-9 is heading back toward the structure, Amelia finished. That's impossible, Trevor said. The last command we sent was maximum burn away from that thing. The probe should still be executing that command. It doesn't have enough fuel to reverse course. I know, I said quietly. We didn't tell it to go back. Then what did? Diane asked. Nobody answered. Nobody wanted to voice what we were all thinking. Over the next 72 hours, I didn't leave mission control except to use the bathroom. I couldn't. I needed to understand what was happening to our probe. I watched as Sentinel-9 continued to accelerate, not away from the structure, but toward Earth. Its trajectory was perfect. Not approximate, not within acceptable parameters. Perfect. Whatever was controlling the probe now understood orbital mechanics better than our best computers. It was plotting a course that would bring it to Earth orbit with an efficiency we could never have achieved. It's coming home, Trevor said on the third day, his voice hollow. It's not coming home, Amelia replied. Something else is coming home. Sentinel-9 is just the vehicle. On the seventh day, I was alone in the lab at 2 a.m., unable to sleep, going through the original scans frame by frame. I'd looked at these images dozens of times, but now I was examining them with different eyes, looking not just at the structure, but at what surrounded it. That's when I found them. They'd been there all along, but I'd dismissed them as debris or asteroids. Now, with enhancement algorithms and closer examination, I could see what they really were. Spacecraft, hundreds of them. They orbited the structure in a loose cloud, like moths around a flame. But these moths were dead, their systems cold and dark. I could see dozens of different designs, different engineering philosophies, different approaches to space travel. Some were sleek and aerodynamic, even though space has no air. Some were geometric and modular. Some looked like they'd been grown rather than built. And they were ancient. The surfaces showed millions of years of micrometeorite impacts. Some were so eroded they were barely recognizable as artificial objects anymore. My God, I whispered. They all came here. They all found it. I called an emergency meeting at 5 a.m. When the team saw the enhanced images, Diane actually took a step backward. How many? She asked. I'd been counting. 473 distinct spacecraft designs. That's just what I can identify as artificial. There could be more that have eroded beyond recognition, and each design represents at least one civilization that achieved interstellar travel, reached this far into space, found that structure. And then what? Trevor asked. Why are they all just sitting there? They're not sitting, Amelia said quietly. They're graves. Those aren't spacecraft, they're tombstones. Whatever they found when they investigated that structure, it killed them, and they never made it home. The briefing with NASA administration and the Department of Defense happened the next morning. I presented everything we'd discovered. The ancient structure, the awakening, the graveyard of alien civilizations, Sentinel-9's new trajectory, bringing something unknown toward Earth. When I finished, there was a long, uncomfortable silence. Then, an Air Force general I'd never met before spoke. He was older, decorated, and his expression gave away nothing. This information is now classified at the highest level. Special access required. Nobody speaks about this outside authorized channels. Nobody tells their families. Nobody posts on social media. If word of this gets out before we understand what we're dealing with, there will be mass panic, riots, the complete collapse of social order. Is that absolutely clear? "Sir, with respect," I said, "if that probe reaches Earth and something happens, people deserve to know. They deserve time to do what, Dr. Cross?" The General cut me off. "To pray, to panic, to rip civilization apart in their last days. If there's a genuine threat, we'll handle it quietly and efficiently. If we can't handle it, then it won't matter if people knew or not. Either way, this stays classified. Am I understood?" I wanted to argue. Diane caught my eye and gave a tiny shake of her head. The decision had been made by people with more authority than we had. "Understood, sir," I said. But I didn't agree, and later that disagreement would save at least one person's life, mine. 3 weeks after we'd sent the pulse, Sentinel-9 crossed Neptune's orbit. It was still accelerating toward us, now travelling at speeds that should have been impossible for a probe with its fuel capacity. The transmissions were changing too, where before we'd received standard telemetry updates every 6 hours. Now data was streaming almost continuously. The bandwidth had somehow increased beyond the probe's original specifications. And there was something else in the signal, something underneath the data. I first noticed it during a routine analysis. There was a low-frequency audio component that shouldn't have been there. Space is silent. There's nothing to carry sound waves. But our probe was transmitting audio anyway. I isolated it and played it through the speakers. It was a hum, low and resonant, rising and falling in a rhythm that wasn't quite regular but wasn't random either. Listening to it made my teeth ache and my vision blur slightly at the edges. "What is that?" Trevor asked. "I don't know, but it's structured. There's meaning in it." Amelia brought in linguistics experts from 3 different universities. Dr. Patricia Hammond from MIT, Dr. Yuki Tanaka from Tokyo University, Dr. James Okonkwo from Cambridge. The best minds in xenolinguistics, all sworn to secrecy, all told they were analysing a potential alien signal, but not told where it came from. They worked for 5 straight days, running every analysis they could devise: pattern recognition, frequency analysis, symbolic mapping, recursive structures. When they finally presented their findings, Dr. Hammond's hands were shaking. "It's not a message," she explained, her voice barely above a whisper. "At least, not a message directed at us. It's more like a countdown, a timer. The frequency modulates in a way that creates distinct markers, and the intervals between those markers are decreasing at a calculable rate." "When does it reach 0? Diane asked. Dr. Tanaka pulled up a chart. "Based on current rate of change, the countdown terminates in 43 days, 7 hours, and 16 minutes, give or take 30 minutes for margin of error." Trevor was already pulling up trajectory projections. That's 3 days after Sentinel-9 reaches Earth orbit. We all understood the implication. The probe would arrive. It would orbit our planet. And then, 3 days later, something would happen. "What happens when it reaches 0? I asked. Dr. Okonkwo shook his head. "We don't know. But Dr. Cross, I need to tell you something. I've been studying human linguistics and communication patterns for 30 years. I've analysed thousands of different languages, from ancient Sumerian to modern programming languages, and there's something about this signal that terrifies me." "What?" "The underlying structure, the way meaning is encoded. It's not alien in the sense of being unfamiliar. It's alien in the sense of being wrong, like listening to music where the notes are slightly off-key, but in dimensions you don't have words for. Whatever created this signal doesn't think like biological organisms think. It doesn't communicate like anything that evolved naturally." After they left, Amelia pulled up something on her computer. "I've been doing research," she said. "Historical research, looking for any precedent for what we're experiencing." She showed us what she'd found, an ancient Sumerian tablet from 2100 BCE, describing stars that fell upward, returning to the sky after touching the earth. Medieval manuscripts warning monks to never gaze too long at the space beyond Saturn, where the watchers in the cold dark waited. Aboriginal Australian oral traditions passed down for over 40,000 years, speaking of the cold ones who sleep in the long dark between stars, and warning that calling out to them brings the end of dreaming. Chinese astronomical records from the Tang dynasty describing the hungry star beyond the wandering stars. Mayan texts referencing the place where light goes to die past the wandering gods. Aztec warnings about Mictlantecuhtli's palace in the sky, where death dreams of life. Every major civilization in human history had some reference to something beyond the known planets, something in the darkness, something that shouldn't be disturbed. They knew, Amelia said. Our ancestors knew something was out there, something dangerous, and they tried to warn us. How could they have known? Trevor asked. They didn't have telescopes. They couldn't see that far. Maybe they didn't need to, I said quietly. Maybe something happened before. Maybe other humans, or proto-humans, or whatever came before us, found that structure, activated it, and somehow warnings were passed down through oral traditions until they became myths. The thought was chilling. How many times had this happened? How many civilizations, across how many millions of years, had made the same mistake we were making? At 2:34 a.m., 3 weeks before the probe's arrival, I received an encrypted message on my personal laptop. The encryption was military grade, far beyond what civilians should have access to. The message was brief. You need to know the truth. Corner Diner, Highway 247, 6 a.m. Come alone. Don't tell anyone where you're going. I should have reported it. Should have told Diane or contacted security. Instead, I found myself driving through the pre-dawn darkness, watching the stars disappear as the sky lightened. The Corner Diner was the kind of place that survived on truckers and insomniacs. Flickering neon sign, coffee that could strip paint, and a handful of worn booths that had seen better decades. An old man sat in the back corner, nursing a cup of black coffee. He was thin, with white hair and eyes that had seen too much. When he saw me enter, he waved me over. "Dr. Cross," he said as I slid into the booth. His voice was rough, tired. "Thank you for coming. My name is Henry Caldwell. I worked on the Voyager program back in the 80s. Voyager? That was a long time ago, 40 years. But some things you don't forget, no matter how hard you try." He pulled a worn folder from a briefcase that looked older than I was. Inside were documents, yellowed with age but still readable. Classified stamps in faded red ink. Top secret, and special access required markings on every page. Voyager 2 detected something in 1989, Caldwell said without preamble. When it passed Neptune, it picked up anomalous readings from the Kuiper Belt, something that shouldn't have been there. We didn't understand what we were seeing, but the readings were strange enough that Mission Control made the decision to send an active signal, just like you did. My blood went cold. What happened? We got a response. He flipped open the folder, showing me transmission logs from August 1989. For 6 days, something answered us. The data was corrupted, strange, but it was definitely a response. Our linguists at the time couldn't make sense of it. Then, on day 7, it stopped. Just stopped completely. We waited for weeks, but nothing else came through. Why didn't you report it? Why didn't the world know? Caldwell's laugh was bitter. We did report it, all the way up the chain. You know what we were told? That we'd imagined it. That the readings were corrupted by solar radiation. That we'd seen what we wanted to see. The project was classified, buried, and everyone involved was strongly encouraged to forget about it and move on with their careers. But you didn't forget. How could I? He pulled out more documents. It's not just Voyager. Look at this. Soviet probe Venera 16 detected something in 1983. Chinese probe Chang'e 5 in 2004. ESA's Rosetta in 2009. Private company probe from SpaceX in 2016. Over the past 50 years, nearly a dozen missions have detected that structure, and every single one that sent an active signal got a response. He spread the documents across the table, reports from different space agencies, different decades, all describing the same thing. An ancient structure in the Kuiper Belt. Active signals sent, brief responses received, then silence. Each time someone sent a signal, the structure's activity increased slightly, Caldwell continued. Not much, just a small uptick in energy output, a slight increase in electromagnetic radiation. We were all filing reports, but nobody was connecting the dots. Nobody realized we were collectively waking something up. You're saying it's been learning, I said. Every signal we sent, every civilization that tried to make contact, it was gathering information. Not just information. Intent. Purpose. Understanding. It's been studying us for decades, learning what we are, how we think, how we communicate. And now, thanks to your probe, it has enough data. It's coming. What is it? I asked. What's actually in that structure? Caldwell's hands shook as he pulled out one final document. It was a report, heavily redacted, with a single grainy image attached. The image showed something that hurt to look at directly. Dark shapes that seemed to exist in more than 3 dimensions. Organic curves that couldn't decide if they were convex or concave. And behind it all, a sense of vast, hungry intelligence. This was taken by a classified military probe in 2003, Caldwell said. The mission was never officially acknowledged. The probe got much closer to the structure than any civilian mission ever did. This is what it saw before it was destroyed. I stared at the image, feeling something deep and primal screaming at me to look away. That structure isn't a ship, Caldwell said quietly. It's not a station or an outpost. It's a warning buoy. A marker left by some ancient civilization, billions of years ago, to warn others. Stay away from this region of space. Don't send signals here. Don't investigate. Just stay away. Why? What's it warning us about? About what's behind it. About what's been sleeping in the deep dark, past the edge of our solar system since before Earth formed. The structure was built by refugees, survivors from a civilization that encountered something incomprehensible and tried to run. They made it to our solar system, built that warning buoy to keep others away, and went into hibernation, hoping that if they were quiet enough, still enough, it would forget about them. And we woke them up. Worse, by activating their warning buoy, by sending signals that the buoy responded to, you announced not just your presence, but theirs. You rang a dinner bell. And now the thing they were hiding from knows where to find them, and where to find you. I felt sick. How do you know all this? Because in 1989, for those 6 days, we were receiving signals. Our linguists managed to decode one message. Just one, before everything went silent. It said, "We sleep, we hide, we beg you, be silent." It listens. It always listens. If you call out, it will hear. If it hears, it will come. Please, please be silent. Caldwell closed the folder, his eyes meeting mine. Every civilization that's ever reached this level of technology has eventually found that structure. Some immediately, some after decades, but they all find it eventually. And most of them make the same mistake you did. They send a signal, they try to communicate, and then something ancient and hungry learns where they are. How many civilizations have died because of this? I don't know, hundreds, thousands. That graveyard of spacecraft you found, those are just the ones that made it to the structure before being destroyed. How many more died in their home systems before they could even investigate what was coming for them? We sat in silence for a long moment. Through the diner's window I could see the sky brightening. dawn coming to another day on Earth, maybe one of the last. "Why are you telling me this?" I finally asked. "Because you need to know what you're up against, because the people in charge are going to try to handle this quietly, and that's going to get everyone killed. And because..." He paused, looking older than ever. "Because I've carried this secret for 40 years, and I'm tired. I'm so tired. If humanity is going to die, at least one person should know the full truth. What can we do? How do we stop it?" Caldwell shook his head. "You can't stop it, no one can. The best you can do is warn others, leave a message for whoever comes after. Tell them what happened. Tell them not to make the same mistake." He stood, leaving the folder on the table. "Keep these documents. Do what you think is right, but Dr. Cross, if you do try to warn people, be careful. The government won't let you destabilize society, even to save it." He was gone before I could respond. I sat there for another hour, reading through the documents, understanding for the first time how many chances we'd had to avoid this, how many warnings we'd ignored, how many times we'd been told to stay silent, and how every time curiosity had won out over caution. When I finally drove back to Mission Control, I made a decision. If we were going to die, then we'd die leaving something behind. A warning, a message, something that might someday save another civilization from our fate. 21 days until the fragments arrived. I say fragments because that's what happened after the military tried to destroy Sentinel-9. With 3 weeks left, a joint task force of NASA and Department of Defense officials made the decision to intercept and destroy the probe before it reached Earth. A modified interceptor missile was launched from Vandenberg Space Force Base with a nuclear payload. I argued against it, screamed against it actually. "We don't know what we're dealing with," I told anyone who would listen. "We don't know what destroying the probe might trigger. What if it makes things worse?" But I was overruled. The decision had been made at levels far above my clearance. 3 weeks later, the missile reached Sentinel-9 near Jupiter's orbit. The warhead detonated. For exactly 30 seconds, everyone in Mission Control cheered. The explosion was visible on our tracking screens, a brief flare of light against the darkness of space. I didn't cheer. I was watching my instruments, waiting for the telemetry to update. "The signal," I said quietly, cutting through the celebration. "It's still transmitting." The room went silent. Everyone turned to their screens. The probe had been destroyed. We could see the debris field expanding outward from the detonation point. But there wasn't just one signal source anymore. There were 17. The debris hadn't just scattered. It had reformed. Sentinel-9 had somehow fractured into 17 identical pieces, each maintaining the same course toward Earth, each transmitting the same countdown. The destruction hadn't stopped it. It had multiplied it. "Oh God," Diane whispered. "What have we done?" Trevor was pulling up mass estimates. Each fragment is roughly 1/17 the mass of the original probe, but they're all maintaining thrust. They're all accelerating. There's no way they should have enough fuel for this. There's no way they should even be functional. "They're not running on fuel anymore," Amelia said. "They're not following our physics anymore." The general who'd ordered the strike was on the video conference screen, his face pale. "Can we intercept them? Destroy them again?" "With what?" Diane asked. "We just used our only long-range interceptor. Even if we had more, we've got 17 targets now instead of 1, and they're already past Jupiter. By the time we could launch anything else, they'd be here." The general's screen went dark. A moment later, our security clearances were elevated, and we were read into a black program that officially didn't exist. Project: Sentinel Response. Objective: prevent public panic and prepare for possible hostile contact. We were given unlimited resources and told to find any possible way to stop what was coming. I worked harder than I've ever worked in my life. 70, 80, sometimes 90 hours per week. Sleeping in the office, eating at my desk. It didn't matter. There was nothing we could do. The fragments were too advanced, too many, moving too fast, and operating on principles we didn't understand. So I did the only thing that might actually matter. I started building a warning, working with Amelia, Trevor, and eventually dozens of scientists from around the world. I coordinated the creation of the most comprehensive message humanity had ever compiled. We documented everything: the discovery of the structure, the decision to send the pulse, the awakening, the approach, what we thought was coming, and why. We encoded it in multiple formats: prime numbers for the mathematically inclined, pictograms for visual thinkers, audio signals modulated in ways that any technological civilization should be able to decode. We even created a symbolic language based on universal constants: the speed of light, the charge of an electron, the ratio of a circle's circumference to its diameter. The message was simple: do not approach the structure beyond Pluto. Do not send signals to it. Do not attempt to communicate with it. Learn from our mistake. We woke something that should have stayed asleep. Stay silent. Stay safe. Stay alive. We loaded the message onto every satellite we could access. We encoded it into ground-based transmitters. We even created physical versions, metal plates with the warning etched in dozens of languages and symbolic systems, and scattered them across Earth. If our planet was destroyed, at least some of those plates would survive, would drift into space carried by the force of the destruction, and maybe, millions of years from now, another curious species would find one and learn from our mistake. It was all we could do, all anyone could do. 14 days until arrival, the fragments arranged themselves into a perfect geometric formation as they approached Earth. A 17-sided polygon, each fragment equidistant from its neighbors, the entire formation rotating slowly as it traveled. Civilian astronomers noticed. Of course they noticed. You can't hide 17 objects bright enough to be visible with amateur telescopes, all moving in impossible formation toward Earth. Social media exploded. UFO enthusiasts called it proof of alien visitation. Conspiracy theorists claimed the government had been hiding the truth. Religious groups proclaimed it the end times. Scientists scrambled for natural explanations that made sense. The government tried to control the narrative, but it was too late. The truth was too big, too obvious. Within 72 hours, everyone on Earth knew something was coming. Diane held a press conference reading from a carefully prepared statement approved by 10 different government agencies. NASA is tracking multiple small objects approaching Earth. While their origin is currently under investigation, initial analysis suggests they may be debris from a previously unknown asteroid. There is no cause for public alarm. We will provide updates as more information becomes available. Nobody believed it. Riots broke out in major cities. Stock markets crashed. Some people took to the streets in protest. Others locked themselves in their homes. Religious leaders saw their congregations swell with people looking for meaning, for comfort, for answers that made sense. I watched it all from mission control, feeling the weight of guilt crushing me. I'd done this. I'd sent the signal that woke the structure. I'd doomed Earth. "It's not your fault," Trevor said, finding me alone in the observation room at 3 a.m. "We all agreed to send that pulse. We all made that choice." "I programmed it," I replied. "I could have refused. I could have argued harder. I could have done something different. And someone else would have done it instead. Either on our mission, or the next one, or the one after that. Humanity was always going to find that structure eventually. We were always going to try to communicate with it. Curiosity is who we are. Then, maybe curiosity is what kills us." 10 days until arrival, I made a discovery that changed everything I thought I understood about the countdown. I'd been analysing the frequency modulations in the fragments' transmissions, trying to understand the structure of the countdown, when I noticed something. The peak frequency wasn't random. It matched something specific. Earth's magnetosphere has a natural resonance frequency. It's created by the interaction between our planet's magnetic field and the solar wind. Usually it's around 8 Hz, though it fluctuates based on solar activity. The countdown was building toward that exact frequency. When I modelled what would happen if all 17 fragments emitted a signal at maximum power on that frequency, simultaneously, I felt the blood drain from my face. The entire magnetosphere would resonate. The whole planet would ring like a bell. Every electromagnetic device on Earth would detect it. Even organisms with electromagnetic sensing, like birds and sharks, would feel it. We wouldn't just be announcing our presence. We'd be lighting up like a beacon visible across light years of space. It's a signal, I told the team during our emergency meeting. The fragments aren't the threat themselves. They're a communication device. When the countdown ends, they're going to broadcast Earth's location, somehow enhanced or amplified by our own planet's magnetic field. Whatever's out there, whatever's been listening, will know exactly where to find us. How long do we have? Diane asked. After they broadcast, how long until... She couldn't finish the sentence. I don't know, I admitted. But based on the Caldwell documents, based on what happened to those other civilizations, I don't think it'll be long. Days, maybe hours. 5 days until arrival. I tried one last time to communicate with the fragments. Using Sentinel-9's original transmission protocols, I sent a message. We didn't know. We didn't understand what we were doing. If there's any way to stop this, any way to undo what we've done, please tell us. We're sorry. We're so sorry. For 2 days, there was no response. I'd almost given up hope when, at 3:17 a.m. on a Friday morning, a message came through. The voice was synthesized, probably created by analyzing millions of hours of human communication to understand how to form words. But there was something underneath it, something that sounded like sorrow or regret or some emotion we don't have a word for. We were like you once, it said, curious, hopeful. We found the beacon in our system in the cold dark of our outer reaches. We thought we were making history. We thought we were announcing ourselves to the cosmic community. Instead, we announced ourselves to something that has been consuming worlds since before your star formed. Can you help us? I asked. Can you stop what's coming? We tried to stop it when it came for our world. We had weapons that could shatter moons. We had technology that bent space and time. We had a civilization that had endured for 200 million of your years. None of it mattered. The thing that came for us was ancient when the universe was young. It doesn't think like biological organisms think. It doesn't want like living things want. It simply is. And where it passes, everything else simply isn't. Then why are you here? Why did you run? Because even in the face of certain death, the instinct to survive is strong. We fled to your system, to this cold place far from any sun. And we built a warning. We encoded everything we knew about the thing that hunts us. We poured all our technology into creating a beacon that would scream "stay away" to anyone who came close. Then we went to sleep, hoping it would forget us. Hoping that if we were silent enough, still enough, it would pass us by. And then we woke you up. Yes, and in waking us, in making us broadcast again, you showed it where we are, where you are. It has been searching for us for billions of your years. Now it knows exactly where to look. We are sorry, so sorry. You deserved better than to die for our mistakes. How long do we have? After the beacon activates. After your planet broadcasts its location. The thing does not move through space the way you understand movement. It exists in dimensions you cannot perceive, following rules that are alien to your physics. When it hears the call, it will come. And when it comes, you will have very little time. Can we fight it? The response took a long time. When it came, the voice sounded unutterably tired. We tried to fight. 17 civilizations before us tried to fight. All of us failed. You cannot kill what was never truly alive. You cannot destroy what exists outside your concepts of existence. The best you can do is remember. Warn others. Hope that someday someone will be wise enough to stay silent. Are you going to try to run again? We will try. We have been trying for billions of years. We have never succeeded. But the instinct to survive is strong, even when survival is impossible. When the beacon activates, when your world lights up and draws its attention, we will flee once more into the dark. Perhaps this time will be different. Perhaps this time we will find a place to hide where it cannot find us. I don't think you will, I said quietly. Neither do we. But we must try. It is all we have left. The voice fell silent. Over the next few days, I tried to contact them again multiple times. They never responded. 3 days until arrival, the fragments reached lunar orbit and stopped. 17 points of light, arranged in perfect geometry, hanging in space like a crown of thorns around Earth. Around the world, people looked up and saw them with their naked eyes. Brighter than Venus, pulsing in slow synchronization, beautiful and terrible. Some people prayed, some rioted, some accepted their fate and spent their last days with loved ones. Some refused to believe anything unusual was happening at all, clinging to normalcy, even as the sky itself announced that normalcy was over. I spent most of those 3 days in mission control, monitoring the countdown, searching desperately for any option we'd missed, any possibility we'd overlooked. There was nothing. We'd done everything we could. The warnings had been distributed. The message was encoded on every satellite, every transmitter, scattered across Earth in physical form. If humanity died, at least we'd die leaving a legacy. A warning to whoever came next. On the final day, with 18 hours until the countdown reached 0, Amelia came to find me. "I'm going home," she said. "I want to be with my family when it happens. I wanted to say goodbye." I hugged her. "Thank you for everything. It's been an honor." "Will you come?" she asked. "Come to my sister's place. We're all gathering there. You shouldn't be alone when it happens." I shook my head. "I need to be here. I need to witness it. Someone should document what happens, right until the end." She understood. She hugged me one more time, then left. Trevor left an hour later. Diane stayed until there were 6 hours remaining. Then, she looked around the control room one final time. "I should go," she said. "I should be with my husband." "Go," I told her. "Be with him. There's nothing more we can do here." She started to leave, then turned back. "Ethan, I want you to know something. In all my years at NASA, I've never worked with anyone more dedicated, more brilliant, or more passionate than you. What happened isn't your fault. If anything, you gave us more time than we should have had. You warned others. You did everything right." "It doesn't feel like I did anything right." "I know, but you did. And I wanted you to know that before." She couldn't finish. Instead, she hugged me, then left. I was alone in mission control. Just me and the screen showing 17 fragments in orbit, counting down to 0. 4 hours until activation. I recorded everything I could. Spectrographic analysis of the fragments, detailed documentation of the countdown structure, my personal observations and theories, everything that might be useful to whoever found this data. 1 hour until activation. I stepped outside. Dawn was breaking over the Mojave Desert, painting the sky in shades of gold and red. It was beautiful. Earth was so beautiful. I could see the fragments with my naked eyes, 17 stars that shouldn't be there, growing brighter as they prepared for whatever they were about to do. 30 minutes. I went back inside, sat at my console, pulled up a communication window and typed one final message. To whoever finds this, we were humanity. We lived on a planet called Earth. We were curious and hopeful and flawed and beautiful. We made a terrible mistake, but we tried to fix it. We tried to warn others. We hope you'll be wiser than we were. We hope you'll learn to stay silent in the vast dark. We hope you'll survive where we did not. Remember us." I transmitted it on every frequency we had, to every satellite, to every system that was still listening. 10 minutes. The fragments began to pulse faster. The glow intensified. Even through the windows of mission control, I could feel something. Not heat, not radiation, something else. Like pressure against my mind, like standing at the edge of an abyss and feeling the pull of the void. 5 minutes. I thought about my parents, about friends I'd lost touch with, about a woman I'd loved once but had been too focused on my career to commit to, about all the small moments that make up a life, all about to end. 1 minute. The fragments synchronized. 17 lights becoming one blinding point, like a new star had been born in Earth orbit. 30 seconds. I felt it then. The attention, something vast beyond comprehension, turning its focus toward us, something ancient and hungry that had been listening, waiting for exactly this moment. 10 seconds. The fragments began their broadcast. Not radio waves, not anything on the electromagnetic spectrum. Something deeper, something that resonated with the fundamental structure of space-time itself. 5 seconds, the countdown reached 0, and Earth rang like a bell. The magnetosphere lit up across every wavelength simultaneously. Birds around the world took flight in panic. Whales in the deepest oceans sang in distress. Every compass on the planet spun wildly. The aurora borealis appeared at the equator, brilliant curtains of light dancing in impossible colours. The fragments broadcast lasted for exactly 17 seconds. Then they went dark. But it was too late. Something had heard. I felt it immediately. The pressure in my mind intensified, became almost unbearable, and I knew, with absolute certainty, that we were being observed by something incomprehensibly vast. I pulled up the deep space tracking systems, pointing every telescope we had towards the outer solar system, and I saw them. The stars were going out, not being blocked or obscured, just ceasing to exist, winking out one by one, as something massive moved between them and Earth. Something so large it was blotting out entire sections of the sky. "Oh God," I whispered. The thing that had been hunting the refugees, that had been consuming civilizations for billions of years, had arrived. And it was bigger than I'd imagined, bigger than anyone could have imagined. I tried to measure it to get some sense of scale. The tracking systems couldn't process it. It was too large. Conservative estimates put it at roughly the size of Jupiter, but it wasn't solid. It seemed to exist partially in our dimension, and partially somewhere else, its boundaries flickering and shifting in ways that made no geometric sense. 12 hours until it reached Earth. That's when I knew I had to leave. I couldn't help anyone, couldn't save anyone, but I could survive long enough to witness what happened and leave a final record. The warnings we distributed might save others, but they wouldn't know if they'd worked unless someone documented what happened to us. There was an escape pod at the facility, designed for emergency evacuation of ISS crew members, capable of surviving re-entry. It had been modified for a classified project, fitted with additional life support, enhanced shielding, and enough fuel for basic maneuvering. It wasn't meant for long-term survival, but it would keep someone alive for maybe a week. I ran to the pod bay, overrode the security locks with my clearance, and strapped myself in. The launch was rough, rattling my teeth, but I made it to orbit. As I climbed, I watched the fragments. They were moving, breaking orbit, fleeing. All 17 of them scattering in different directions, running from what was coming. The refugees were abandoning us. I couldn't blame them. They'd tried to warn us. They'd spent billions of years hiding, only for us to wake them up and doom them. If they could escape, they had every right to try. They didn't make it. I watched through the pod's cameras as massive tendrils emerged from the approaching darkness. Not physical tendrils in any normal sense, more like extensions or projections or the shadows of things that existed in higher dimensions, casting shadows into ours. They moved faster than anything should move, reaching across millions of kilometers in seconds. One by one, they caught the fleeing fragments. Each time the fragment's light simply stopped, not fading gradually, not exploding, just there one moment, gone the next, erased from existence. The last fragment fled toward the sun, perhaps hoping the heat and radiation would provide some protection. It was wrong. The tendril that pursued it moved through the sun's corona without slowing, unaffected by temperatures that would vaporize any material we knew. It caught the final fragment just above the sun's surface. I had a clear view through my sensors. The fragment fought. For the first time, it fought back. Pulses of energy, exotic particles, physics we'd never seen before. None of it mattered. The tendril absorbed everything, grew slightly larger, and consumed the fragment entirely. The last survivors of a civilization billions of years old, who had been running for longer than humans had existed, were gone. Now there was only Earth. 8 hours until arrival. I watched from orbit as chaos consumed my planet. Cities went dark as power grids failed. Communication networks collapsed. In some places, fires burned unchecked. In others, desperate masses tried to flee to underground bunkers, bomb shelters, anywhere they thought might provide protection. It wouldn't help. I knew that. The scientists monitoring from whatever facilities still had power knew that. But people needed to feel like they were doing something, even if it was futile. 4 hours until arrival. The tendrils reached the asteroid belt. Where they touched, asteroids simply ceased to be. Not shattered, not broken apart, just erased, their mass and energy drawn into those impossible structures. Mars was next. I watched through my pod's telescope as tendrils wrapped around the red planet. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then, Mars began to fade, like a photograph left in sunlight for too long. Over the course of an hour, a world that had existed for 4.5 billion years simply stopped being. 2 hours until arrival. The moon went next. Humanity's eternal companion, which had hung in our sky since before life crawled out of the oceans, was erased in 47 minutes. 1 hour until arrival. The tendrils crossed lunar orbit. They were close enough now that I could see them with my naked eyes through the pod's window. Dark columns against the stars, reaching toward Earth like fingers closing around prey, and I could feel it, the thing's attention, its hunger, not in any physical sense, but in my mind, in my soul, in whatever part of me was conscious and aware. It was looking at Earth not as a planet, but as food, as energy to be consumed, matter to be absorbed, existence to be unmade. 30 minutes until arrival. Day turned to twilight on the planet below as the tendrils blocked the sunlight. People around the world reported the same thing in their final messages, an overwhelming sense of dread of being watched by something impossibly vast. 15 minutes until arrival, the first tendrils touched Earth's atmosphere. Where they made contact, the air didn't burn or compress. It just stopped existing. A hole in the atmosphere growing larger by the second. 10 minutes until arrival. I was crying. I couldn't help it. I was watching my entire world die, and there was nothing I could do but document it and hope someone, somewhere, would find this recording. 5 minutes until arrival. The tendrils were touching down now. Cities, forests, oceans, all dissolving where they made contact. Not destroyed in any violent way, just ceasing to be, as if they'd never existed at all. 1 minute until arrival. I pulled up my communication system one final time, recorded this message. If my pod survives, if these recordings drift long enough to be found, maybe they'll save someone. 30 seconds. The main body of the thing reached Earth. I couldn't look at it directly. My mind couldn't process what I was seeing. Something that existed in dimensions I couldn't perceive, following rules that made no sense, consuming my world. 10 seconds, I thought about humanity. 4 billion years of evolution, thousands of years of civilization, all the art and music and love and hope we'd created, all being erased as if we'd never been. 5 seconds, but we had been. We'd existed. We'd looked up at the stars and wondered. We'd dreamed of finding others like us. And in that dreaming, we doomed ourselves. 0. Earth died. Not in fire. Not in ice. It simply stopped being. Over the course of 3 minutes and 47 seconds, every atom, every molecule, every particle of the planet I'd called home was unmade. The thing absorbed it all, grew slightly larger, then moved on, its tendrils reaching deeper into the solar system, methodically erasing every planet, every moon, every asteroid. The sun lasted longest. It flickered for 6 hours, its light growing dimmer and dimmer, like a candle in a wind that blew from outside reality itself. Then it too was gone. Where our solar system once existed, there is now nothing. Perfect emptiness. Not even dust remains. The thing moved on, presumably seeking its next meal in some other system, some other collection of worlds with civilizations curious enough to call out into the dark. And I'm here, in my escape pod, drifting through empty space where Earth once orbited. The pod's AI estimates I have 6 hours of oxygen remaining, maybe 7 if I stay calm and don't exert myself. I won't last that long. About an hour ago I noticed something. The pod's sensors are detecting a faint energy signature. It's behind me, growing stronger. One of the tendrils noticed me. A single human in a tiny pod, insignificant and small but still existing, still taking up space that could be empty. It's coming for me now. I can feel it in my mind, that terrible attention focusing on me, specifically. In a few minutes, maybe an hour at most, I'll join Earth. I'll join the billions of humans who died, the refugees who ran for billions of years. The 473 civilizations that came before us. We'll all be gone, as if we'd never been, but this recording will survive. The pod is programmed to eject its data core as a separate unit if hull integrity is compromised. It'll drift through space, solar-powered, broadcasting the warning on every frequency for potentially millions of years. Someone will find it. Someone will hear this message. And maybe, just maybe, they'll make a different choice than we did. So, I'm recording this final message for you, whoever you are, whenever you are. You found this recording, which means you've achieved space travel. You're curious about the universe. You wonder what's out there, and I'm begging you, stay silent. Don't send signals into the deep dark. Don't try to announce your presence. Don't go looking for ancient structures in the cold places between stars. We thought we were ready to join the cosmic community. We thought we were sophisticated enough, advanced enough, careful enough. We were wrong. We woke something that should have stayed sleeping. We called out into the void, and the void called back. And now we're gone. All of us. Every human who ever lived. Every dream we ever had. Every achievement we ever made. Erased as if we'd never existed. Let that be our legacy. Let that be our warning. The universe is vast and ancient and full of wonders, but it's also full of horrors. Things that exist outside the rules you understand, following logics that make no sense, hungering for reasons you cannot comprehend. Stay quiet, stay hidden, stay alive. Don't make our mistake, don't. The energy signature just spiked. It's here. I can see it through the window. A darkness that isn't darkness, moving towards me with terrible purpose. My instruments are screaming, trying to make sense of something that defies measurement. I'm not afraid anymore. Just sad. Sad that we had so much potential and wasted it on curiosity that killed us. Sad that we'll never know what we could have become if we'd just stayed silent. The thing is touching the pod now. I can feel it. Not physically, but in my mind, in my soul, in whatever makes me me. It's not malicious. That's what's so terrible. It's not evil or cruel or sadistic. It simply is. And where it is, everything else isn't. I'm dissolving. I can feel myself coming apart, atom by atom, existence by existence. It doesn't hurt. It's more like fading, like falling asleep, like forgetting what it means to be real. To whoever finds this, remember us. Remember humanity. Remember that we existed once in a small blue world orbiting a yellow star. Remember that we looked up at the night sky and wondered. Remember that we dreamed of finding others like us among the stars. Remember that our dreams killed us. Learn from our mistake. Stay silent, please. Just stay. Recording ends. Data core ejected. Broadcasting, waiting. For someone who will listen. For someone who will learn. For someone who will survive where we could not. The warning drifts through the void. The stars are beautiful tonight. So beautiful. And so very, very silent.